Jack Grealish was obviously the headline. The people around me, as soon as he started warming up, got very excited.
Hmm.
When he came on, I think he got the loudest cheer. Although, to be fair, when Bernardo Silva came on, he got a pretty loud cheer as well. What's your overall view of the Jack Grealish signing and, the pros and cons, if we look at it both sides, of what he's going to bring to City?
I think the fact that City are able to bring in one of the most exciting players in England at this moment in time and in the Premier League is, it's a big statement to be able to do that. And it's interesting because I think as he comes into City now, at this moment in time, I don't think that he's the best player at City. I don't think he's really that close to being the best player at City, but he's got a ton of potential. And I think if he ends up being one of the best players for City, I think we have an incredible talent in him in that side because he's going to have to learn about playing the game in a different way. I think for what it is to play for City now, every game is a must win. If you don't win a couple of games, it's a crisis. You're playing under true pressure, not a case of all the performances were okay. Like, no, there's a case of you play well, you stay in the team. If you stay in the team and you're playing well, you're probably winning games. You get a chance to play in the biggest games come the end of the season because for the last few years, City have had a ton of huge games come the end of the season. So I think it's a pro to think that after having won the league, you've strengthened by bringing in somebody who is that exciting. As I say, the con is the fact that now you've got to pick maybe 3 or 4 players out of a pool of 6 to play on a week-to-week basis. And I can tell you myself, to not be one of those main guys can be very frustrating. And that's coming from me. So imagine if, for example, you see a particular game day and on the bench, you've got, say, Sterling and Foden or something like that, who would ultimately, in my opinion, get into any team in the Premier League. So it's, I say the con is just maybe the timing, because there are a lot of riches there. And I feel like there are going to be some people who are disappointed. And even like looking bigger picture, I looked at Ferran Torres in the summer for Spain. I thought he looked great. So I'm expecting a big year from him. But then somebody comes in. It's like, well, maybe this isn't going to be the year for him, but I'm sure City have a plan. And hopefully it's a good plan that will be able to bring in as many of those players as possible and to keep building for the future. So I think that's basically the way that I see it for now.
Where do you stand, Nedum, on the frustration that some fans feel that the number one priority wasn't to go for a striker, and that still a striker is the top priority?
I think I'd start by saying the window's not closed yet, so there's still time for that. But as far as the Grealish thing goes, there's a figure which needed to be met to make it happen. I think if there's a striker out there that had the same sort of situation, I think City probably would have had a striker by now. But for trying to deal with that, and if we're talking about Kane, especially with a Spurs side led by Daniel Levy, the complications are almost endless. But again, City did very, very well last season without a 9. But I just think this year, and maybe going forward, the thing that takes them to that whole new level again is somebody who will finish the season and score 20, 25 goals. Because with that, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 9, but I feel like that's the sort of number which will define success, especially when you're looking at, say, Chelsea potentially bringing in a Lukaku, I think will do 20, 25 goals. I think a fully fit Cavani for United might get 20, 25 if he's rolling. The Liverpool guys tend to do that year in, year out. And for City, sort of takes a bit of pressure off the other people when you know that you have somebody, as we had with Sergio for so many years, who can just find a way to just City don't. If you have a striker that can do that, you don't need to be playing well and dominating games to win games. Something can just happen, And I think with that type of player on the field, it brings the fear into the opposition because they know they have to be alert for the whole time. So I personally would, I would like to see somebody like a new striker potentially come in that can do that. But again, in Pep, we trust because he just spent the last 9 months showing to us that you don't need Sergio Aguero to win a Premier League title. And that blows my mind considering how good he was for the club.
A lot of fans, though, listening to this will still feel, I'm not doubting what you're saying, and I think that as well, that it's all about this unpredictability of the attack and having the threat coming from everywhere. So I'm not sure having an out-and-out number 9 is what City need. But when you watch the game, I know it was only the Community Shield and it was half a team and everything, but the one thing that was missing was somebody to sort of turn a goal in and to produce something like Sergio would have done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why people get frustrated. If City had scored 2 goals yesterday, or if at Tottenham next weekend they scored 2 goals in the game without an out-and-out striker, nobody will care then. But as soon as the goal doesn't go in, then the first thing everybody does is the default position is, why haven't we not got a goal-scoring striker, don't they?
Yeah.
That's football fans.
Yeah. But like, you're right. That's exactly how it is. And even times gone by when, say, City didn't have a striker on the field and he created a ton of chances and missed them, it still feels different to a time when you've got a striker on the field, create a ton of chances and he missed them. You're looking at the game in a different manner, even though it's essentially the same thing. Like if you don't have a 9 and you have a lot of chances and they fall into quality players, surely that's a better sign than, say, maybe having a 9 and not creating chances anyway. But, we sort of fantasize about, like, Sergio scored 260 goals. And in my mind, I feel like he only had 270 chances to do it, but clearly that's not necessarily the way. But I don't know. I think in Pep and in the recruiting team and in City in general, I do trust them. And I think that they'll have a plan in play. And I doubt they'll be frustrated come September 1st or 2nd or whenever it is, because, they do have time to try and fix any issues, which they believe they have.
It's quite unusual what City have done, isn't it? I mean, the press conference on Friday, Pep, for the first time that I can remember, and I've watched pretty much all these pre-match press conferences, he was willing to talk about a City target. Whenever he's been asked about Kane or whoever it might be in the past, he's always said, he plays for that team. I don't talk about players playing for the teams. In this particular case, he said, well, yes, we are interested in Kane and lots of other people are. So he has admitted it. So there's a bit of politics going on, which obviously you know about and you've alluded to. But is he right to sort of put so much effort into signing these two players? He's got one of them and now the other one quite publicly, and rather than to do what this club have done in the past, which is to have a few. I mean, I know Tammy Abraham has been mentioned as a potential other alternative, and so too was Danny Ings. But it feels to me as if now everything's in the Harry Kane basket.
Yeah, it does seem that way. But I think the reason for that is because we've just seen Sergio Aguero leave Manchester City. So straight away you think to yourself, well, obviously City need a striker. And then you think, well, he scored 260 goals in 10 years. So they obviously need a really good striker, it feels like. So then when you're looking through the league for people who have that sort of caliber, who might be available, who might be at a club which perhaps doesn't suit their ambition, the story kind of writes itself. And I'm not saying that he definitely will come or anything like that, but people can see the logic in City trying to get Harry Kane to come to them, to try and take them to the next level, to replace Aguero, and for Kane to step up and try and win something. So, as I say, it speaks for itself. And I think if Pep kept trying to dodge the question, considering it's the only news headline that's going on in the Premier League at this moment in time, like you'd be thinking, well, why is he doing this? Why is he doing this when it's so obvious? Like Kane hasn't arrived for training. This has happened. Kane says this. Someone from City said that. Buyout clause, Levy, blah, blah, blah. Like sometimes you can't escape it. You can try and be diplomatic, but it speaks for itself. If you won't answer the question, someone else will answer it for you, because in the end, as I say, this just feels so obvious.
He didn't duck the Messi question, but what he did say was that at the point everybody said, well, are you going to go for Messi? Well, it's only been revealed in the last 24 hours and we've only just started to take it in. It seems that Messi, after his big emotional goodbye speech with Barcelona today, might be heading to PSG. They've certainly made the early running. And by the time people listen to this, it might all be done, because I think PSG want to do it as quickly as possible, because there's a little bit in the back of my mind, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but that maybe this big speech today and the big announcement that he's leaving is actually part of a tactic to try to make La Liga and their president do some sort of U-turn on letting him stay at Barcelona. I mean, it is such a political thing, football, isn't it, Nedum?
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. And I heard that from the get-go. As soon as it was announced that he was leaving, most of the people I know who are involved in media, journalists and so on, like, they were saying there's a good chance that this might be a bluff. And then time passes and I'm hearing, well, but he's definitely gone to PSG, and said, no, it might be a bluff. But I suppose the difference is now, for Messi to be involved in the bluff, I think that's when I'm not really jumping on board with that, because he's not doing crocodile tears at the stage talking about his time at the club. Now, that felt very genuine to me. And to be honest, here's my thing, yeah. So if he would have come to City, I think he's an exceptional player. Like, he's probably been my favorite player of all time. But if City would have gotten him after getting Jack Grealish for £100 million, like, I can hear it because I'm in the press and so on. So many people hate Man City. They hate Man City. And I think if he would have come, Like it would have been a wrap. Every time we're not winning a game, you would have found millions upon millions of people saying, haha, laugh at City and all this stuff. So in some ways, I'm glad that he's not come, because I feel like we can still focus on being a club where some people want to play for and they like the way that the football's played. And now, like, you know, casually, some people like PSG, but there's a lot of people who think, well, PSG have got Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi playing up front, and they could be three of the biggest deals that they're on in like world football history. So you start asking questions, well, finances, this, that, and the other. So I don't know. As I say, I would have loved to have seen him play for City in the past, but in this particular moment, like, it's heartbreaking seeing but leave Barcelona. I'll be honest with you. Like, I always have the narrative, Ronaldo, he goes wherever, he's successful wherever, but Messi is the Barcelona guy. He is that club. And now he's gone. It's like, well, I don't really know what to say next. But in some ways, as I say, it would have been nice if it was a City in a different sort of circumstance. But in some ways, I think the pursuit for a 9 is more important for City in this moment for the long term, because I think overall, the club do that quite well. They do look for the long term instead of bringing in people who perhaps are a bit older, regardless of how good they are.